Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Beyond Terrain podcast. I'm your host, Liam Dalton. Today, we're going to have a fantastic episode about a topic that I love, movement, and tying into a really interesting topic, neurology. So, super looking forward to this. If you're new around here, consider following the show or subscribing. And if you like the show, give us a rating or if you review, a comment as well if you're on YouTube. A like is all that stuff. Sharing is always the best way to get the word out there and help us grow and help support the show. So, all that would be much appreciated. We have a fantastic guest. We were just chatting there before the show, and such a great energy already. I'm really looking forward to this. We have Missy Bunch on. Thank you so much for coming on and for your time.
You're so welcome. I'm so excited to contribute to your community and just hang out with you.
Yeah, great, great. So the first question I ask all my guests, I ask them to define health. What health means to you? You can take it in any direction that you'd like. What does it look like? How do you attain health? Kind of more
Mm.
formal definition, whatever you'd like. So I'll give you the floor and we'll take it from there.
Oh, thank you. I love that question. I love when a question makes me take a breath and just reflect for a second. To me, health really is having freedom to do what you want to do with your body and feel what you want to feel in your body. I think many of us, you would be a rare gem if this hasn't happened to you, but some of us, most of us have felt like a prisoner in our body at one point or another in our lives. And just the thought of this could bring me to my knees because I have had many dark, low places where my body was not cooperating and doing things I wasn't expecting or not recovering at the speed I wanted and all the things. So to me, health is freedom.
That is a beautiful way to answer that question. And I really love when it takes that direction, right? Because it implies that health is so individual too, right? It's the freedom to do what aligns with your values and your being and your journey, right? So, and that looks different for everybody, right? We're all in different situations, and yeah, that's really nice. I'd really love to know a little bit about your story there. Like coming into tying in neurology and movement together and kind of what those have done for you on your path of healing and just your journey in general.
Man, so, I was a little, I'm not gonna say teeny bopper because I wasn't that young, but I was in my early 20s. I'm turning 40 this year. And neurology appeared into my life when I was identifying with a knee injury that I had. It had become who I was. I was a knee injury, right? And I met a woman who had taken a class called Z Health. And this was so long ago that you would put a CD in your car to listen to music. And all the young people are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. But you used to put a CD into your car when you had that. It was like a podcast at that time, but you bought like a Tony Robbins CD, right? And you'd play it. And I call it car university when you're learning things in your car. But she came up to me. She said, "Hey, I was listening to this education system, and they were talking about pain and how there's this thing called opposing joints where your right arm swings with your left leg during gait." And how they work together. And that's how people walk. Like no one walks with the right arm and the right leg and then the left arm with the left leg. Like no one walks. And it was one of those moments where I am obsessively, admittedly, I'm just obsessed with movement and humans and just everything that has to do with people. And it was one of those times where she said that and it made sense to me. I thought, that is logical. I like what you're saying. It makes sense to me that the right arm moves with the left leg. And then I moved my body and I was like, wow, that really is how it works. And she said, so let's give your right elbow a go for your left knee pain. I'm sorry, what? Okay. I'm 4 years into trying to fix this knee pain. Not a single professional could help me. And I hired every person you could possibly list off on a piece of paper that could help someone with knee pain. I didn't miss a repetition of rehab. I was doing acupuncture, cold therapy, hot therapy, Chinese herbs. I was doing urine samples, stool samples, physical therapy. I mean, I was relentless, right? And this knee pain wouldn't leave. I do a couple movements with my right elbow, take a step, and my knee pain's gone. I'm pausing on purpose because I want everyone to feel the emotions that could arise when you've had 4 years of an issue that literally made you alter the direction of your life. And then someone's like, move your elbow a couple times, and then that pain goes away. I have visceral reactions while I'm telling this story, and I was relieved, I was shocked, I was surprised, I was grateful, but mostly I was angry that it worked. I was not happy about this experience because I was just left with, if I didn't know this and I'm a movement freak, what is the regular average Joe gonna do when their knee hurts? That's what I was pissed at. I was pissed at like the globalness of it, the humanity aspect of someone who's obsessed with movement didn't know this. So clearly someone who has no idea what's going on with the human body is never going to come across this information. So I basically make it my life mission. I kind of just declared from my heart and soul and mind and body and everything in between, I'm going to teach this to everyone I meet for the rest of my life, and I don't care. There will be nothing that stops me, and I still am that to this day. You know, you can't hang out with me and me not talk about something with your body, right? Like it's not really possible. I mean, maybe. But that's the journey that took me down this very very narrow path that not that many people are on. It sounds a little bit weird, and especially at that time it was very weird. Now it's 2025. Odd conversations are a little bit more like accepted. So I don't feel as weird, but back in my 20s I had no confidence. I'm 4'11. I'm very small, like literally I'm a physically small person. I was always in a male dominated industry. Everyone's like bench pressing and I'm over here having clients doing eye exercises. I mean, you have to have a level of secureness inside to be able to pursue this path. So, still to this day, I'm like, well, if I would have known that when I was at the peak of my professional dance career, what could have happened? What if I could have been famous for dance? Like I don't know what could have unlocked if I knew neurology, but I didn't. And this was my path and this was my journey. And now I'm here to share the story of how powerful very, very, very simple techniques can be. And they're so simple that they're not widely accepted, right? Because people want rehab to be complex and complicated and grueling and sexy. And I'm over here like, can you move your tongue? And you either want to hear about that or you don't, but to me, I follow the anatomy. I watch the results. I'm 15 years into this journey now. And it's been a beautiful, beautiful ride.
Wow, well, thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. I think it's so cool that from such a simple little observation that the left arm swings with the right leg, it's so simple. But one thing that I've kind of been learning along my way too is that often health is simple. We tend to overcomplicate these things, right? So I really appreciate your point of view on that. The other thing that is kind of more hits close to home with kind of my field and what I'm doing is identifying with your injury or your ailment, right? And it becoming kind of your identity. Like you mentioned, feeling like a knee injury. I think that's a really common thing. People identify that they're somebody who has Crohn's disease or they are this, they are that, right? And just that, almost like that brick wall that our mind puts up, kind of not allowing us to heal or something like that. And what stuck out to me is that you learned about this interesting way of looking about things, and your mind kind of had to switch gears and look at things in a different light, and then it kind of like unlocked this whole other chapter, right, where you had to almost redefine your own identity, right, because you weren't a knee injury anymore, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of that anger and stuff came from that too, right? Trying to be like, well, I've been this for 4 years, right? And so I think that's really, really amazing, like just how you came about that. And I completely agree. Like I've been, I love movement. I started out going to the gym as a little 15-year-old who wanted to get juiced and, do bench press all the time, right? That's how it always starts, I guess. But um, yeah, I am just coming into this whole idea of tying neurology with movement. It's such a fascinating thing, and not enough people know about it, and not enough people are talking about it, but people like you are, and I think that's really, really important. It's changed my whole way of thinking about movement, right? But it's again so simple and so obvious, right? Our nervous system dictates all of our movement. It's so interconnected, right? Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah, no, that's great. So moving like into this idea of adding neurology into movement, you mentioned eye movements, tongue movements. It kind of allows for this more holistic way of looking at movement in a way. Would you agree with that?
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you go about in like adding in all of these subtleties of the body, like moving your tongue and your eyes, and how do you even start incorporating this kind of stuff into your movement practice?
You mean personally? How would you, or with a client?
And the listener as well, we could probably learn a lot from how you did it as well too, right?
Oh, right. So if okay, so yeah, if we're talking at it from more of a general population perspective, how do you begin? That's a great question. I would start with very simple things like education,
Mm,
because education alone can and will change the pain experience.
mm,
Period. And I think that's a huge missing in my community is I know more than you need to hire me. And I'm like, there's a $12 book on Amazon called Why Do I Hurt? You should buy that. and learn it for yourself. It might be $17, but it's called Why Do I Hurt? It explains pain very clearly to the general population. Um and just starting with that will allow for the window of opportunity to open so that the person feels empowered from themselves and it's generated from their curiosity and not a told you so or I know more than you. It's no look read this. It's this tiny, it probably has 20 pages. It's a small little teaching book, but if your body is in fight or flight and threatened by its environment, you cannot perform. So, we'll start with education first, understanding what pain actually is. Pain does not equal injury, and injury does not equal pain, right? And that concept alone, that statement right there could change someone's life. There's a doctor, his name was Dr. James. He's out in Florida. He worked with professional pitchers, baseball players. And he was so sick of doing these surgeries and he wanted to make a point. So he started doing imaging on these shoulders. And 90% of the players that went through the scans had operable damage to their tissue, zero complaints of pain. So, what does that tell us about pain? Right? I mean, I have chills. I wish you guys could see my goosebumps under my sweater, but I have goosebumps from head to toe because these types of they're small little stories, but they are profound. When you hear that, oh, their tissue under an image will show you should operate on me. But you talk to the athlete and they're like, "What? I don't have any pain. I'm crushing it. I'm at the peak of my career," right? Same thing with herniated disc, bulging disc, all the things. So now I'm on a tangent. I forgot what the question was. Oh, how do you start? So First, education. And I just mean low barrier, low hanging fruit. Just like, what is pain really? Just really low stuff. And then, probably simple, less weird things to start with would be breath work, because we can all agree that that is researched enough and studied enough, and there's enough professionals and there's enough science to where I think that might be a pretty good low barrier, high compliance for the client to go like, okay, I agree with you. I think I will try some breathing. And from me, I come at it from a totally different angle in my brain, but I might not explain it to them that way from a neuro. I'd be like vagus nerve, diaphragm, phrenic nerve, cervicals, right? The cervicals have the phrenic nerve. The phrenic nerve controls the diaphragm. Diaphragm has a neural correlation to upper trap. I would be doing this whole neural thing in my head, but I would just say to them, hey, let's try some long exhales and just reassess your discomfort after that. And 99.9% of the time, it is going to be better just from breathing. To them, they're just breathing. To you and I, it was a whole very well thought out, educationally, picked out reason that I chose longer exhales for vagus nerve stimulation to get to the parasympathetics and the whole, right? It goes on and on. Breath work is probably the easiest way to get to someone into the conversation.
Yeah, this is really hitting home for me, right? Because I tie a lot of this into kind of the psychotherapy side of things, right? And the importance of movement for mental health. And you're explaining it perfectly, bang on why movement and breath work and things like this help, right? And oftentimes it is a flight or flight issue. And it's very interesting that you're tying in pain to this idea as well. I know you started on that tangent. I want you to keep going. What is pain?
Okay, so I learned this from Dr. Cobb from Z Health, and we all have our big mentors, like top 5 probably, but to me, he's like this immortal, like God type person where, when I first heard him talk, I was just I just, how are you a real person? I don't even know if he is. He might be an alien, which I'm totally fine with. But he would read, he was like, oh yeah, I just, read like 100 studies a day on the just cat. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what did you just say? Did you, did you just say you read 100 studies per day? I thought he was going to finish the sentence with a year. And he said per day. And I was like, okay, I am a flea. So, um, his teachings say this: pain is a signal to do something different. Period. End of story. So I kind of think of it like this: you have a pain signal in your elbow, and you can say, okay, this is a signal to do something different. This doesn't mean I have tennis elbow. This doesn't mean I have an ulnar nerve injury. This doesn't mean I hurt my tissue, soft or hard tissue. That Let's take a breath. Pain is a signal to do something different. So I teach my clients and people and colleagues, okay, thank you for sharing. I'm so glad my body and brain are working properly to send me a pain signal. If we didn't have a pain signal, that would not be good. We would not want that, right? My sister's had brain surgery. She could put her hand on a hot stove and not know it, right? Because she has a compromised brain. She had surgery in her brainstem. She's not going to receive the pain signal. This is not a good thing. We want the pain signal. So it's like, thank you for sharing. Now I will do something different. And it's an appreciation rather than a fear of. I'm so grateful to know that pain is a signal, right? So if I'm out and about doing something crazy, I have a 4 and a 2-year-old. Life is wild, okay? You're always like saving someone's head from hitting a curb, or like catching a ball, or a Barbie stabbing someone in their ear. Like it's all crazy, right? And I'll get, let's like say I get a weird twinge in my left knee, which was my quote unquote bad knee. And I take a breath and I pause and I say, thank you for the signal to do something different. And then I reassess and it's totally fine. But if I went into a spiral of that's my bad knee, That's my bad knee. What happened? Did I tear it? Is my ACL, MCL, meniscus okay? And now we're increasing, and now I'm breathing into my clavicles and scalenes and sending off, hey, something's wrong, something's wrong. It's, so we are in control. And that's where that educational piece comes in, right? If you say to someone, pain is a signal to do something different, they can come from a place of being empowered instead of scared of their body. So for me, now I know this. I don't fear pain anymore because I know it's a signal. And obviously, we're not talking about if you got in a car accident and your arm was broken. I'm not talking about an acute, severe external injury. You guys, this is more, the chronic type of pain. But yes, if your arm fell off, you really should see a surgeon. You can't eye exercise your arm on, you know. So that's a joke I made. It's like, no, this is you need to see doctors when you need to see them. So um pain is a signal to do something different, and it's really all based on what we call the threat bucket. So you have a bucket, and it's like the last straw on the camel's back type of thing, where if you are hungover, stressed out, you're having marital issues, your kid's doing poorly in school, you're eating low quality pizza every day, then ice cream and all that, you right? And your threat bucket's full to the very top, and you reach in your car for your backpack and you tweak your back. It's not from reaching back in your car to grab your bag. It's everything that led up to it. So if someone comes to me, if Leah were to come to me and say, "This is what happened," I would say, "Okay, what happened before that?" Because one day you were normal and the next day you weren't, or in one moment. So, you know what? Actually, this is going on, this is going on, this is going on, this is going on. Okay, here's what we're going to do. There's a lot of things we can't control. You did get hurt. Your pain is real. Your pain is valid. You are experiencing pain. There's all these variables we can't control. You broke your toe when you were 20. You had an appendix surgery. You had a root canal. There's all these things that happen to you. So, what can we take out of the threat bucket? That's where the power lies. You have a weak left eye? Well, I could work with that. Let's take that right out. You don't do breath work? Let's practice that to regulate your nervous system. You can't smell out of your left nostril? Let's take that thread out. You have weird balance on your left leg only? Let's work on that. You have a tattoo that kind of itches when you're hot? Let's work on that. And you see, I have goosebumps again. Now we took out 12 things from your threat bucket, and all of a sudden, your pain experience is lower. You reach behind your car to grab your bag, and you don't tweak your back. Interesting. Reduce the threats that you can, because there's all these variables we cannot control. Okay, I've had two unwanted C-sections. They were very, very traumatic for me. I can't do anything about that. It happened. I have two healthy babies. I'm safe and sound. Okay, the right side of my scar is super hypersensitive. What can I do about this? My brain finds it threatening. So let's work around the tissue. Let's do the breath work. Do, whatever. So is what I'm saying making sense?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I think it's a really empowering thing beyond education, right? It's very empowering to know, like, I don't know. I think it's a really good way to go about it. But I think that it comes back to your definition of health too, right? To have the freedom to move within, what your body allows and what your circumstance allows, right? Because obviously things happen, and that's going to dictate what you can and can't do for the most part, right? Like, but obviously there are some times where we do have self-limiting beliefs, right? And we got to distill those down and see we can remove these self-limiting beliefs. We can work on the threats that you were talking about there. Like, yeah, that's really interesting. Even the way that you kind of talk about threats, like some of the examples that you were bringing up, like having an itchy tattoo or something like that, or just really like mild things that I wouldn't even consider to be a threat in a way, right? Like, but these are all signals, right? They're all signals from our body saying that we got to change something in a way, right? So, Yeah, I think that's great. Even like poor balance on one side versus the other side, and so fascinating, so fascinating. I remember talking with Emerson Goldsworthy on a podcast episode, and he was talking about having he had a foot injury at one point. He might have tweaked his ankle or something, and he was out for a walk, and he was like limping down the road. And so he decided that he was gonna start limping on the other side. Like, so like, kinda trick his brain into limping on even though he was limping with his left ankle, he decided he was gonna start limping with his right ankle. And he went for a walk and pretended to do this and did all this different stuff, and by the end of his walk, he felt a lot better. So, I was like, "Oh, that's interesting," and so I thought,
Yeah, I love that.
I kinda tweaked my ankle there, and I thought, "Alright, well, like, yeah, this kind of hurts, and um, I'm gonna try that." So I went out, and instead of limping on it and really babying it, I kind of like went the other way, and it was just such an interesting little activity, and it did. It felt a lot better. It was so weird how that kind of happened. Just I wouldn't even know how to begin to explain that, but it was just a really cool idea, and it just came to mind when you were talking about pain as being a signal to kind of change something up, right? Because it'd be very easy for me to go and baby it, and I have really flat feet, and so I've rolled my ankle quite a lot, and I've babied them, like, and they don't really get that better. Well, now I train my feet, and I have a lot strong, like my feet are a lot stronger. So even when I do get into positions that I would have rolled and injured my ankle, it doesn't happen anymore. But even if I do tweak my ankle, one, I recover a lot quicker, and it's just about that. Um, it's about that change, right? It was like, my feet are still fairly flat, but they're a lot stronger and they're a lot mobile, like they're more mobile and stuff like that too. So just a couple things that kind of came to mind there. That is really
I
fascinating.
love that you brought this up. 2 things. I have the flattest feet of anyone you'll ever meet, right? And I actually love that about my body to show people that that doesn't mean XYZ. Like, look at me. I'm one of the most mobile people you will ever meet, right? But my feet are when I get out of the shower, there is a whole footprint, right? And everyone makes fun of me because I just have the
No, I am
flattest
with
feet.
you.
Yeah, like I just have really flat feet. But it's kind of this blessing from my position to go, look at my feet. And I don't have the XYZ symptoms that you're supposed to have or what. Um, and the other thing that the interview you had that you were mentioning about the limping ankle guy, sometimes this example will help with clients where I'll say, what you're dealing with is what you're dealing with. But if I broke your pinky right now, you would not feel that pain. You wouldn't. It's not possible. The brain cannot delegate resources that way. You would only be like, my pinky. So it's all relative, right? Like, what is worse, this or that? Or, it's so I sometimes that context will help. It's like, well, if I broke your arm right now, your right ankle tweak you wouldn't even notice it. So it's funny because when you start reducing and taking the threats out of people's threat buckets, other stuff pops up. And they're like, wait, I haven't thought about this knee injury since I was 12. And to me, it's beautiful because we're just chipping away. We're just chipping away. The statue of David, we're chipping away everything that isn't you until you are left.
Wow,
So I
very
want
nice.
it all. Okay, we're left eye's not weak anymore. Great. Your tattoo doesn't itch. Great. What's next? Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's keep checking them off. And there you are,
Hmm.
which sometimes, well, you're a psychotherapist. So most of the time or all the time, the mental battle with these things is harder for clients to deal with than the actual thing. A right ankle sprain. Okay. Here it is, black and white textbook. This is what happened. It bruised, it swelled, all things, right? But then it's the psycho stuff. I don't even know how to explain it. That's harder to deal with, which I have a skill set from experience, not from a doctorate, right? I see it and I can speak to it because I've been there, but you have this whole professional toolbox of how to help people through that, that could be and maybe is more powerful than any of it is how to,
Mm.
I work with professional athletes and they say to me they have I don't know what it's called, athlete psycho I don't know. There's a term. They only work with professional athletes.
Sure.
Sports psychologist?
Sports
Maybe?
psychologist, I think, would be,
Something
yeah.
maybe
That's
some
how
but
I would know
anyways,
it.
what a beautiful job to
Yeah.
help the athlete through this part. I'm pointing
Mhm.
at my brain. This part of dealing with body stuff. This is the hardest. And that same thing with me and my C-sections, right? So I'm someone who can drop into the splits, cold bodied, no problem. I'm Filipino. I live in a squat and I had to have C-sections. It is something I will forever have to grapple with. It's between me and God, I guess, right? But it's
Mhm.
physically should have happened in my mind. Like I have the physical capabilities to have a natural birth. So how it's like the
Mhm.
mental part of it is very challenging.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, and I do see a lot of overlap too, like because one of the like introducing movement is something that I kind of do indirectly with clients, right? It's not something I can do on a very direct level, like but just introducing any type of movement can be really helpful. Um, and I think there's really interesting connections too between obviously, there's a lot of talk now between chronic pains and trauma and things like that, which is a really interesting part of the field. And even like we were mentioning, like these threats, like is exactly what I'm talking about too. You know what I mean? Like when you're talking about removing these threats on a physical level, like a balance issue or a left eye weakness or whatever, this often like unlocks interesting parts of our brain and like you're mentioning, like everything's tied to this neural system, right? And so neural system's the brain as well, right? It's all very connected. So it can really open things up and even allow things to flow. Like obviously we live in a kind of a world where we lack movement. A lot of people lack movement and it's a very unnatural thing to not move. So even introducing that movement you see like instant results kind of on the mental level as well and um especially if you're over identifying with an injury or something like that, healing from this physical ailment can have huge effects on like introspection, needing to look deeper on who you truly are as an individual because your injuries don't define you and your whatever it is, like anything that happens to you doesn't necessarily define you, like you're much greater, more powerful being than that, right? So I do see a lot of similarities there. Um, and even like what I find interesting, like we were talking there earlier, and it might be a good time to kind of bring this into the conversation. I'm trained in eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR. And bilateral stimulation is the mechanism that allows for the processing of trauma, right? So what I find really interesting about this, the most interesting thing about my whole training on EMDR was that going out for a walk is bilateral stimulation. So simple movements like that, you're actually subtly doing what I would probably do on a more intense level, right? So, um, and I think again, like what you're addressing imbalances, stuff like that. I do truly believe with everything in my heart, and I think there is literature that suggests that this is true, but even imbalances in the body or tight muscles and stiff muscles, stuff like that, or not being flexible. All this is taught can be tied to sometimes, obviously, there are very physical causes as well, but can be tied to incidences in your past, like traumas and stuff like that. So I think it's such an interesting connection, right? I mean, obviously, we can't study anything in isolation. That's really one of the conclusions that I'm coming to, and That's so interesting. So you do a lot of eye exercises and stuff in your practice. Like, do you do EMDR?
Funny story. Um, so I've seen some techniques, and I was like, I need to hire a professional. I don't know what I'm doing, because I know hundreds of eye exercises, but with the bilateral movements, I just wasn't sure what was going to happen, or so I hired someone, and we worked together for a couple sessions, and I tell her my issues. It's basically I'm better now, but I have insomnia, and I'm very high functioning, high energy. I I've seen both of my parents passed away. I have, my sister had there's a lot there. Very dysfunctional upbringing. And so I hire her for this very specific purpose of I would like to do EMDR. This is my jam. I want to experience it, and she a couple maybe third, fourth session in, we haven't done any yet. It was just the talking aspect of therapy. And she says to me, your case doesn't make sense to me. I need to run it by some of my colleagues before we attempt any of these EMDR techniques. And I'm like, okay. She goes, and I'm probably saying it not correctly, but you'll get what I'm saying when I try to say it is she said, I feel as if we were to attempt this without doing it properly, we might unlock some Pandora's box. I don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know how to deal with that. Because I'm so high functioning, there's not really a problem that's associated with my trauma per se, besides insomnia. I really, really do deal with that. But it doesn't affect me in a way that I can show. Like, I'm used to it. So it's like an adrenal cortisol issue probably when I'm like 65. I don't know. But anyways, the whole point of the story is I hire someone for this, and 4, 5, 6 sessions in, we haven't done any of it. And she does not professionally recommend that we do it. And I still haven't done it. And I was so eager to tell you this because you just got your training in it. And I'm like, well, I have a funny
Interesting.
story because I
Yeah,
haven't tried any yet because I was not recommended to do so. And
very
still
interesting.
haven't, because now I'm kind of scared of a Pandora's box thing. Like, what is going to happen? And if
Hmm.
you're not prepared for the aftermath, or you don't have techniques to deal with who knows
Hmm.
what, then so I just kind of took a pause, and now I have no idea.
Sure. Yeah, 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 absolutely. Well, and that's the thing. It can be a rather intense thing, and there are ways to kind of titrate it as well. But what I really like about sort of the subtleties of the way that you approach movement and even indirectly bilateral stimulation and just movement in general does that, right? Like I think that that's like the one of the main mechanisms because but the way that you're approaching movement is like that's a way to go about it, to go about healing anything without having to worry about a Pandora's box or anything like that, right? Like if you go for a walk, you're not going to unleash some sort of crazy,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
exactly.
Like it's not gonna set you off, right? But maybe like, if you're doing like an intense session or something when you shouldn't be, obviously there are risks involved and stuff like that too, right? So that's a really interesting story actually. Yeah. Yeah, that's
I
really
really
interesting.
respected her for it, right? I was so
Absolutely.
grateful because could it have like ruined my life? I have no idea. Like, I have kids to raise. Like, I just don't know. And she's just like, she said to me, you shouldn't be functioning the way that you do. And I can't explain it. I've been doing this a long time.
Huh. Yeah.
We were both kind of like, okie dokie. And then I
Yeah.
moved from San Diego to Arizona and just kind of, just stopped working with her, not for any reason, but just kind of forgot, to be honest. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so here we are. What is the R for? So eye movement desensitization
Reprocessing.
reprocessing. Okay, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a cool modality. It's a really cool modality. And one of the like when I learned about it, it was so interesting. Like it would be cool, like, from sort of your school of thought if you could like sit in on a training, because I think that you would really love what they talk about, right? Like I think you would really love, it's all tied into neurology. It's all explained through that lens. And I think a lot of it would really resonate with the work that you're doing, and you would like, it's very clear to see how like just moving your body is a very healing thing, you know? And so that's why like if anybody asks me like what, like anybody ask me, how do I become healthier person? It's movement, because it addresses it addresses the physical, right? If you're going to try and heal your physical body, if you have any, aches and pains and imbalances and stuff like that, addressing that will, help you like be optimal physically, but it very directly affects your mental health, right? And I really think that it's the missing piece to the reason why we have this huge crisis, this mental health crisis, right? We also have a movement crisis. We're not moving anymore, right? I don't think this is like a far-fetched thing at all. It's obviously correlation, but I do think that there's a lot to suggest that there's a big connection there. So I think it's so interesting, and um I like to recommend movement and even body work as well, things like osteopathy or different like modalities of, you know, aligning the body in a way, right? Because there's this interesting philosophy like the alignment of the body allows for like the free movement of energy, right? And the more Eastern traditions, which I think has holds a lot of weight. Again, with the connection of the physical and the more mental or spiritual realm. So I think it's so cool. I think it's absolutely amazing. So in your work, when you're doing like you're working on the more physical level, like is any physical movement kind of training that neural system in a way? Like, when you do the eye movements, this is like training like is it training that neural system? Is that a good question to ask you?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Here's the thing, you already know the answer, which it's an absolute yes, right? So movement does here you're doing neurology whether you know it or not. That's kind of the shtick is like you might as well know it because you're doing it. Might not be done well, but you are doing it. um so it all depends on the relevant goal and what movements you would choose, right? Because sometimes, especially now that you have this EMDR background, it's sometimes going straight to cranial nerves is way too threatening for people. And I experienced this personally, and this is a kind of another reason I got into it because it triggered me so much. And I was like, how could this possibly make me cry? And I was so confused, you know? So I was just doing basic saccades. I mean, it's just left, right, left, right. And I start bawling in front of the room because it was like, who wants to volunteer to learn this exercise? So Doc would teach the exercise while everyone's watching. And I volunteer and I'm moving my eyes right to left. Your head stays still. And I start crying in front of everyone. I was so embarrassed. I sat down with my arms crossed for the next 3 days. Just, I could barely learn because I was so irritated and embarrassed that that happened to me. And the whole time, how could that make me cry? It was just eyeball movement. I just so good, So then I realized like, wow, that's something I really should learn about and explore because it had such a big impact on me. So let's do this, right? So if you just assume people can do eye exercises, that's not appropriate because we don't know. So I like to regress cranial nerve exercises initially, and then if the body and nervous system is a thumbs up, green light, okay, now we can actually do the exercises. But we don't we don't know the history yet. Unless you do know the history, then that's a different story, but they might respond better to ankle circles. And you're coming at that from a neuro perspective. You're like, okay, nonlinear movement contributes and is front not contributes, it's generated by the same side cerebellum and the opposite cortex. So movement is neurology, and that's kind of what I mean. If it's nonlinear, if it's a circle, an infinity, or an 8, the same side cerebellum is like very excited. It's like brain candy. It's like, yes. you know, um, but if we're doing cranial nerve stuff, that's a different story. If you're doing midline stuff, that's also a different story. I have come to learn if you have an issue on the midline, so eyes, nose, mouth, throat, tongue, chest, abdomen, pelvic floor, if I work on something else on the midline, it helps the other midline issue. I don't really know how to explain it. It's anecdotal, I guess, but I've seen it. I know it. I can stand behind it because I've tried all kinds of things. I can kind of tie it to when I was prepping for my first birth, I read all these midwifery books, and there was this woman who was a 30-year midwife. Oh my gosh, that is a very cute cat. If you guys don't know, Leah has a very cute cat. It's furry with white paws.
He shows up every
Um,
once in a
oh
while
my
just to interrupt
gosh,
the show.
he's so cute. I love animals. This midwife confirmed, like, right, with all these births she helped, that if she coached a woman to relax her jaw, the cervix would soften. So, I mean, I have chills again. I took that nugget of information and I ran with it. You're going to love this example, okay? I know we're like probably way over time, but you're going to love this. It's worth it. So, I have this client and we're probably like 3 months in. She's dealing with all this stuff, and we're going there and there's no turning back now. So I'm just going for it and everyone can respond how they respond. But she had a lot of yeast infections and no one could help her. Like all the Western medicine route was just like antibiotics, this and all that, right? It was just not working. It was getting worse actually. So she trusts me and I'm like, if you're not going to give up, I won't give up. And I start learning about this midwifery correlation of, let's call it their opposing joints to a midwife, maybe throat, mouth, vaginal wall, cervix. So I start asking her more questions about her mouth. I get a lot of canker sores. You get a lot of canker sores. Interesting. Why do you think that happens? And start exploring that. And we cannot figure this thing out. Why is she getting canker sores? So about 3 months of exploring and racking my brain, I'm like losing sleep over this because nothing's helping her. And I'm so irritated that I can't figure it out. And I want whatever. She's still getting yeast infections. Okay. Because as a woman, this is the worst thing, right? I've had one in my life that was okay. So I care about her. I love her. I want her to feel better. Here's what I figure out. Start asking about her food and dental hygiene, all these things. Missy, I eat these little circular Baby Bell cheese circles. And I think those are causing my canker sores. Interesting. So we take those out of her diet. Canker sores are eliminated. And guess what's next? The yeast infections go away. And I'm like, what? The freaking Baby Bells?
Unbelievable.
So, yeah, so over the course of my career, I kind of start trying this theory on a couple different situations, this genitalia area with mouth and tongue and throat. And like another thing comes up. This is not even a client, a girlfriend of mine, we're working out together. She's like, my boyfriend, the odor just doesn't smell right. And and I'm like, I'm just curious. How is his oral hygiene? Just starting with like low, very chill questions. She looks at me like I have 10 heads, right? How did you he actually has horrible oral hygiene practices. And I'm like, no way. She goes, his parents are dentists. So he has this psychological rebellion about dental health because of the way he was brought up with the teeth and so he doesn't floss, he doesn't brush his teeth, da da da. And I'm telling her, I'm like, I'm going out on a limb here, but it's probably going to work. You figure out how you're going to have those conversations with him. however you do it in your girlfriend way, get him working on his mouth, come back to me, right? I hear from her like 2 weeks later. Odor's gone. He started flossing, brushing his teeth. Missy, like you're a voodoo witch magic doctor, blah blah blah. Like not doctor, sorry, voodoo witch. You know what I'm saying? Black magic. All, and I laugh because I'm like, it's not voodoo. It's I I follow breadcrumbs. I, you know what I mean? I follow the yellow brick road. And I'm more of someone like, let's just try it. And the worst case scenario is it doesn't work. That is the worst thing that's going to happen. It doesn't work. Hey, Missy, that didn't work. Oh, dang. Next. But if it works,
That
that'll be
is the coolest
$500. No, I'm
story.
kidding. But yeah,
No,
so
that's amazing.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. No, and I'm so glad that you shared that. That is really eye-opening actually. Really interesting consideration. I've never thought about that, never heard that. That is amazing.
Midwifery. Thank you, midwives.
Wow. Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. What I really love most about your approach, yeah, let's relax our jaws,
Yeah.
right?
Relax your pelvic floor.
I really love about your approach that it's a big attunement piece too. There's a little bit of trial and error there. I think these are the fundamental things that really make a great practitioner. So I really appreciate you kind of sharing all this information with us. If I get some final thoughts on the episode, anything that you want to add to what we've been talking about, now's the chance.
This is so hard to answer. This is my chance. It really is. It sounds stupid, cliche, and you've heard it a million times, but really just trust your body. Your body is smarter than you. Your nervous system is smarter than you, and no one knows what you're feeling.
Mhm.
No one. No one. Not me, not Leah, not your dog. No one knows what you are feeling. So we are on the other side trying our best, but you have the answers within you and your nervous system has the answers, and trust that. You have a gut feeling for a reason.
Absolutely. You are the expert of your own body. No one can take that away from you. That's great. Missy, this has been a great conversation. How can the listeners learn more from you? You have a fantastic Instagram page, I know that. Where else can they find you? We'll put all the links down below too. And how
Oh,
can they
it's so
support you as well?
easy. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, my name is real. It's not a stage name. Some people think I made it up. My name's Missy Bunch. You type that into the Googles, I will show up everywhere. But if you go to missybunch.com, there's so many resources for you. I have freebies on my Instagram. You literally just have to comment a word, joints or nerves will get you some free information. I have a free training on there. My signature program is a self-paced mentorship that comes with weekly live meetings directly with me weekly. So it is very well worth the investment. I actually think it's on the lower end. Every business coach I hire tells me I'm undercharging for my program, but it's basically a crash course in the basics of neurology and my 14 years literally compiled into one convenient place with a private community and my support with every client case study, and it's just an amazing thing that I'm very, very proud of. And I also do business coaching, so very easy to find all of those resources. DM me, email me. I love to hear from people. I'm a people. I'm a coach's coach. So I love to hear from you.
Okay. That's amazing. Missy, thank you so much for everything today. This has been an enlightening conversation and your great energy. So thank you so much for your time.
You're so welcome. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks,
I want
Leah.
to thank you all for listening. You should all know that this is not medical advice for your informational purposes only, but also remember that we're all responsible sovereign beings capable of thinking, criticizing, and understanding absolutely anything. We, the people in the greater force, are together self healers, self governable, self teachers, and so much more. Make sure to reach out if you have any questions, criticisms, comments, concerns, whatever it is. You can find me on Instagram. That's the best way to reach me. Otherwise, you can leave a comment, email, whatever. I'll find you at some point. And if you like this podcast episode, if you like what we do here, give us a comment, a review, a rating. All that would be much appreciated. Sharing is always the best way to get the word out there and help us grow. Just remember, there are two types of people in the world: those believe they can, those believe they can't, and they are both correct. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care.